What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to discuss the Resident Evil 8 leaks. So I'm going to be going over what we've learned. Again, these are just, quote-unquote leaks. Take it with a grain of salt. You can't always trust it, but I thought this would be a really fun video to do. So I'm going to read out what we got from the leaks, the kind of info we got, and I'm going to give my analysis of what I think. Now, when you guys are seeing the screen grabs of this, you may see this general article, the person writing it, doesn't exactly, I feel like it all that much. He kind of takes an just approach to it, so just keep that in mind. I'm not going to be talking about what he says. I'm going to be talking about what the leaks say. So here it is. Rumor, first potential Resident Evil 8 details have leaked. Ethan from 7 is the protagonist. It goes back to first person. Zombies return. New enemy type, werewolves. New stalker enemy type, and Chris Redfield will return in some form. This eventually goes on to say that it may not even be called Resident Evil 8. It could be part of Capcom's idea to do a spin-off kind of thing where they just have their games be spin-offs, no more actual numbered. So that was a thing. And also the new stalker enemy type, it's like a ghost. It's a phantom female monster that stalks the players, and they can be diverted with attacks. It doesn't say it in this, Twitter grab thing that you guys are seeing the picture of, but I had seen elsewhere that they kind of clarified the stalker enemy are ghosts. So new faction. So let's talk about this. Let's go kind of one by one. Again, this person, the article writer, he did not, I think, like Ethan from 7. Here's the deal. I didn't think Ethan was like the greatest character in the world. I feel like the main character in Ethan was maybe one of the weaker parts in 7, besides the whole, I'd say probably last 1 hour of that game where they just kind of took it a completely different direction. But I think they could do worse. I think that if you're keeping him, at least you have that continuity. And I didn't think he was a bad character at all. Obviously, I think it worked with 7. And if you bring him back, really, that doesn't tick me off. That doesn't upset me. It's not Resident Evil 7, even if you go back to 5 and 6 with the way they did with Chris Redfield, it didn't rest on the shoulders of the protagonist. I didn't think Chris was very good at all, but 7 I actually thought was kind of a step up from that. It's first person. That should not be surprising to anybody, and yet, again, I feel like it's more of a hit piece on this article. The guy who wrote this really had a problem with it, and you can even see probably in the screen grab a person wrote and said first person with a frown face. I get it, Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, the remakes, now that we've gotten those more recently, both of those will have come between the two big Resident Evil games. So we got Resident Evil 7, then we got Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, and then probably after that we would get the next main installment, whether it be a spin-off or whether it not be. But so I get that people are maybe conditioned now to like the third person route again, and it totally works with Resident Evil 2, with Resident Evil 3. It even kind of works. I mean, it definitely works with 4, and even to some extent it works with 5 and 6 because of the more action oriented. But that's just what 7 did, and I think that made honestly, a huge difference. Not seeing Ethan at all times, not having the camera over his shoulder, behind his shoulder, I think that makes a big deal, and the way that they kind of grabbed the horror back and recaptured why these games can be terrifying, and I think made the most terrifying Resident Evil game of all time with Resident Evil 7. Again, I think 80% of that game, they did such a phenomenal job. I was such a fan of that game, and I feel yes, I mean, the atmosphere, doing things a little bit differently was a big part, but part of that atmosphere was the fact that it was first person, that you were kind of trapped in just your camera view. So I love that. I thought that was, I think they kind of took that from PT. Not that that's anything new, having a first person horror. I mean, so many games have first person horror games, and they definitely can pay off if you do it the right way. So again, I thought that was kind of just assumed. These first two things, I thought they were just assumed. Zombies return, I guess that could be something where it's well, they don't have to do zombies. And especially with 7, they kind of didn't. It was supernaturally in a way, but really they stayed kind of clear of it. So having them return, I guess that's fine. I think they can still live in a world with Resident Evil where they can still make zombies terrifying. And really, if we're thinking classic, we're just replaying these, we're having these remakes. If we're thinking about the zombies of Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, even Resident Evil 1, now we get this is the modern day version, and we get, okay, well, what's it like in first person, and what's it like with this brand new twist that Capcom has done on it, where they're like, okay, we're gonna make this terrifying. Can they make zombies terrifying? I honestly feel like they can. And then they add some new things. So the werewolves and ghosts. Now, it's tough. This is tough. I actually told my fiance this, and she didn't like it, and I can understand why. If, like, it's grounded in a way, Resident Evil, but at the same time it's not, right? Zombies and all, but it's because of, like, the virus. And so if you're gonna have werewolves, if you're gonna have, especially ghosts, I have no problem with this, by the way. I love that. Now, I don't think ghosts necessarily fit in the Resident Evil, like, world, like, lore, and honestly, I don't necessarily think werewolves do either. I think you can go very wrong with the werewolves approach. So when it comes to, like, which of these two am I more worried that they would mess up, I think ghosts are definitely more like high risk, high reward, because I think really the ghosts can absolutely make this game next level. If you thought Resident Evil 7 was scary, which I'll tell you my opinion, I thought it was. I thought it was absolutely terrifying. If we all thought that was scary, imagine, again, like, assuming that it's just as good and it even gets scarier, but now they add zombies, and they do it right. And now they add a werewolf for some reason, and they do it right. And then they add freaking ghosts. They add the supernatural element to it. I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big twist. And if they nail that, and having ghosts in a first-person horror game, it's not hard to do it wrong because you can mess it up, but, like, come on, if you nail it, it's gonna be the most terrifying thing ever. So really, I'm just reading these and I'm getting very, very excited. And then the final thing, Chris Redfield will return, and then I guess also the fact that it may not be called Resident Evil 8. That's fine. Bringing back, continuing, I guess, the lore and the history of Resident Evil. Because again, Resident Evil 7 was more of like a soft reboot of the franchise. After 5 and 6 took it in that direction, they had to reel it back in. I have no problem with it. I honestly don't have much to say about it. They didn't specify how much Chris is going to be in the game, so he may just have a cameo. He may be, a side character, whatever. But I have no problem with that. And then whether it's called, 8 or whether it's called something else, again, it's Resident Evil. I'm very excited about this. I'll tell you, Resident Evil, if I list my, like, favorite franchises of all time, it doesn't make the list. I think I'd list so many more before it. But I try, having this channel, but also just being a gamer myself, I honestly do try to play as many different games as possible, and I have played a vast array of different genre of games. I've also played different, like, AAA kind of games and small indie games as well. I love a lot of different kinds of games. Even some of my favorite games of all time aren't, your typical, like, action-adventure games or whatever. So, but Resident Evil, it's a special game, and I haven't really, I never played, like, 1, 2, and 3. I did play 4. I played 5 when it came out. I played 6 when it came out. I bought 7 when it came out. I beat it. I beat all the games. So, like, I do love this franchise. I think this is a very good franchise that's definitely had a tough go in 5 and 6. But listen, after that, they've been on an absolute roll with 7, with the 2 remakes, which, again, like, I don't really think 2 and 3 are all that scary, but, like, the remakes are making them scary just because of how they're doing it. And 7, I think, just hit the ball out of the park. I truly admire 7. I think they did such an amazing job. So any leaks for Resident Evil 8, I shall welcome. I cannot wait. I think it's a perfect game, like, for me. I'd love to play it on the channel. I'd love to make videos on it. I'd love to talk about it as well. I think there's a lot of, like, untapped potential out there with talking about Resident Evil. So I'm very, very excited. Let me know in the comments below, guys. What do you think? What do you think about all of these leaks or rumors of Resident Evil 8? When do you think we would see it? I'd assume with next gen, it's probably coming sooner than we think. Honestly, I feel like it could come within the next year or two. So when do you think we'll see it? When do you think we're having it come out to us? Is there any videos you specifically want me to make on Resident Evil 8? Let me know in the comments below. If there's something out there that I can kind of connect with, I'll absolutely make a video on your suggestion. You just have to let me know, okay? So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.